Right now, a signal is reaching the device in your hand. It traveled about 20,000 kilometers to get here. By the time it arrives, it is weaker than a 25-watt light bulb seen from that same distance. It is so faint that your phone cannot really hear it at all. It is buried underneath the background noise of the universe. Your phone digs it out anyway, using a trick we will get to in a minute. Now imagine that signal stops. Most people assume the first thing that breaks is the map or the planes. It is not. The first industry to fail is banking, and it fails in under an hour. Because banking does not need to know where it is. It needs to know exactly what time it is. And for the last 30 years, the whole world has been getting its time from space, for free, without ever really deciding to. This video is a countdown. Hour 1, Hour 6, Hour 48. We are going to walk through exactly what breaks, in what order, and how fast. No panic, no jargon, no doomsday music. Just the actual chain of dependencies, one link at a time. If you find this kind of breakdown useful, hit the like button. These take a serious amount of research, and every like genuinely helps more people find them. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because there is a part later you should not miss. There is a real day in January of 2016 when a version of this actually happened. The error lasted around 12 hours. Almost nobody outside a few engineering teams noticed. But radio stations went silent in one country, and telecom alarms went off on 3 continents. The error was 13 microseconds, 13 millionths of 1 second. We will get there. But first you need to understand what this thing actually is. Because almost everyone, including me for years, has it slightly wrong. Chapter 1. It was never really a map. The system went up over decades, starting in the late 1970s. It was built by the United States Air Force for the United States military. Today, there are more than 30 working satellites up there. They sit about 20,000 kilometers above your head. Each one circles the planet roughly twice a day. They are arranged so that from almost any open spot on Earth, several are visible at once. And inside each satellite sits the actual product. Not a camera, not a transmitter of maps, an atomic clock. Usually rubidium, sometimes cesium. Accurate to a few billionths of a second per day. And every satellite does exactly one thing, over and over, forever. It shouts the current time and its own position into space. That is it. That is the entire service. The satellite does not know you exist. It has no idea how many people are listening. Your phone does all the work. Here is the trick in plain language. Your phone catches the timestamp from one satellite. It compares that to its own idea of the time. The difference tells it how long the signal was flying. Radio waves move at the speed of light, so flight time converts directly into distance. One satellite gives you a sphere of possible positions. 2 satellites narrow it to a ring. 3 narrow it to 2 points, one of which is usually somewhere silly, like deep space. 4 satellites give you a position and something else. They give you the exact time. This is the part that changed the world. Your phone contains a cheap, mediocre quartz clock. On its own, it drifts badly, seconds per month. But because it has to solve for time to solve for position, it ends up correcting itself against an atomic clock in orbit. Constantly, automatically, to within billionths of a second. And that correction is free. Nobody bills you for it. Nobody sends an invoice to your bank, your phone carrier, or your power company either. Chapter 2. The free utility nobody planned for. In the 1990s, engineers started noticing something. A GPS receiver was the cheapest atomic clock on the market, by an enormous margin. A real cesium clock costs as much as a luxury car and needs maintenance. A GPS timing receiver costs less than a phone and needs a view of the sky. So they started bolting antennas to the roofs of buildings, onto mobile network base stations, onto electrical substations, onto data centers, onto bank infrastructure, onto television and radio transmitters. Nobody held a meeting about it. There was no global decision, no treaty, no vote. It happened one purchase order at a time, in thousands of separate companies, over 25 years. And that is how a military navigation system quietly became the heartbeat of the civilian economy. Every system tapping the same source, with no agreement between them and no shared backup. Now let us break it. Hour 0. Nothing happens. The satellites go quiet, and for the first few minutes, the world does not react at all. Your Maps app still shows your position using the last fix and your phone's motion sensors. Nobody looks up. Nobody notices. The planes in the air keep flying because they also carry inertial systems. And every timing receiver on the planet does the same thing. It falls back on the local clock sitting next to it. Engineers call this holdover. It is exactly what it sounds like, holding on. An expensive rubidium oscillator can hold accurate time for days. A cheap one holds for hours. The world is full of both, and almost nobody knows which is in which building. Hour 1. The money stops. Modern financial markets are not really about prices. They are about order. Who placed which order in which sequence down to the microsecond? After the crash of 2008, regulators demanded proof of that sequence. In Europe, rules require high-frequency trading firms to timestamp events to within 100 microseconds of official world time. And critically, to prove where that time came from. When the source disappears, clocks in different buildings start to drift apart. Not by much, microseconds. But microseconds are the entire unit of measurement in this business. Trading systems are built to detect this and refuse to continue. So they do the responsible thing. They stop. Not because the market crashed, because the market can no longer prove what happened first. This is the part that surprises people. The planes are still flying normally at this point. The banks have already stopped. Hour 2 to hour 6. The phone in your pocket. Your mobile network is not one system. It is thousands of towers pretending to be one, and they hand you between them as you move. That handoff has to be timed precisely, or your call drops. Some network designs are more sensitive than others. Networks that share one frequency by splitting it into time slots need very tight synchronization. Every tower has to agree on when each slot begins. Think of an orchestra where every musician is in a different building. The conductor is a satellite. Remove the conductor, and for a while, everyone keeps playing from memory. Then, slowly, they drift. Cheap towers drift first. Rural ones. Older equipment. Coverage does not vanish. It gets patchy. Calls drop more often. Data slows. Some cells shut themselves down rather than interfere with neighbors. By hour 6, in a dense city, most people have finally noticed something is wrong. And this is roughly when it becomes a news story, which brings a second problem. Emergency dispatch uses location data to route the nearest unit. Graded location means slower dispatch. Not impossible, slower. And in emergency medicine, slower is the whole ballgame. Quick pause, because we are about to leave the ground. If this is holding your attention, a like on the video genuinely helps it reach other people. And stick around for hour 48, when a system you have never heard of starts making decisions blind. Hour 6 to hour 24, the sky. Here is the good news, and it is real good news. Aviation is the one industry that refused to fully trust satellites. Every commercial airliner carries inertial navigation, spinning sensors that track every movement from a known starting point. No signal needed. It just knows how far it has moved. Airports also kept older ground-based radio beacons alive. Regulators were pressured for years to switch them off and save money. They refused to switch off all of them. That decision is now the reason the sky does not close. But something does change, and it costs enormous amounts of money. Controllers can no longer rely on precise satellite-based position reports, so they increase the spacing between aircraft. More space between planes means fewer planes per hour. Fewer planes per hour means the schedule collapses backwards through the day. Airports do not stop. They throttle. By hour 24, thousands of flights are delayed or canceled worldwide, and cargo is delayed with them. Hour 12 to hour 48. The sea. Ships have the same story, with a worse ending. Paper charts and traditional navigation still exist. The skills mostly still exist, though they have thinned out badly. The problem is not the open ocean. Ships are fine in open water. The problem is the last 2 kilometers. Modern container terminals are heavily automated. Cranes, straddle carriers, yard planning software, all positioning driven. Take that away, and the terminal reverts to manual operation. Manual works. Manual is roughly a third of the speed. And a container port running at a third speed does not simply run slower. It backs up. Ships wait offshore. Trucks queue at the gates. The backlog compounds every single hour it continues. Day 2 to day 7. The grid, the field, and the bill. The electrical grid is where this gets genuinely interesting. Because the grid does not stop. Your lights stay on. This is important, and I want to be clear about it. What the grid loses is not power. It loses eyesight. Across a modern grid sit thousands of sensors measuring the electrical wave itself. They measure the shape of the current, hundreds of times per second. Comparing that wave in one city against the same wave 400 kilometers away is how operators spot trouble early. But comparing them only works if both measurements carry a perfectly matched timestamp. Those timestamps come from satellites. Without them, operators lose the ability to compare across distance. They are not blind, exactly. They are driving in fog. They can still see local readings, but the early warning system for cascading failures is gone. So they do what any sensible operator does when instruments fail. They run the grid far more conservatively, with bigger safety margins, which means more expensive generation and a higher bill for everyone. Now the part almost nobody predicts. Farming. A modern tractor drives itself along the row to within a couple of centimeters. That precision is not vanity. It stops overlap. Overlap means double fertilizer, double fuel, double seed on millions of hectares. Without positioning, a farmer can still work. Their grandfather did. Just slower, less accurately, and considerably more expensively. And there is a detail that makes this brutal. Planting has a window measured in days. Miss it, and you do not lose efficiency. You lose the season. So what does all of this actually cost? A study prepared for the American Standards Institute put a number on it. Roughly $1 billion per day for the United States alone. And during the spring planting weeks, closer to $1.5 billion per day. That is one country. Now multiply the logic across every economy that plugged into the same free signal. Chapter 7. This is not hypothetical. On the 26th of January, 2016, the United States Air Force retired an old satellite. Routine housekeeping. Take one unit out of service. During that process, a timing parameter was uploaded incorrectly. A small correction value buried deep in the message every satellite broadcasts. The mistake propagated to a large portion of the constellation. The resulting error was around 13 microseconds, 13 millionths of a second. For navigation, that is meaningless. It moves your map position by a few kilometers at most, and most receivers ignored it. For timing equipment, it was a catastrophe. Digital radio transmitters in the United Kingdom dropped off the air. Telecom operators across multiple continents logged synchronization alarms. Engineering teams spent the night hunting for a fault in their own equipment. The problem lasted roughly 12 hours before it was corrected. It made almost no news at all. And that is the whole point of this video. 13 microseconds of error for half a day, and parts of the system started falling over. It happened again in a different form in 2019. The system counts weeks using a number that runs out and resets. Older equipment that had not been updated suddenly believed it was 19 years in the past. Some devices simply stopped working until they were patched. And backups can fail too, which is worth saying honestly. In July 2019, Europe's own navigation system went down for around 5 days. The satellites were fine. The ground control system was not. So the failure mode we are discussing is not exotic. It has happened more than once in smaller doses. And then there is the deliberate version. Around a decade ago, a driver in the United States bought a cheap jammer to stop his employer tracking his van. His route ran past a major airport. Every day as he drove past, he knocked out a precision landing system that was being tested there. It took investigators a long time to find him. He was fined tens of thousands of dollars. The device was smaller than a coffee cup and cost less than a pair of shoes. That is the asymmetry at the heart of all this. 20,000 kilometers of altitude, decades of engineering, billions of dollars, defeated locally by a gadget in a truck. Today, that same interference is used at scale in and around conflict zones. Airline crews now regularly report false positions in certain regions of the world. It has become a routine safety briefing item rather than an unusual event. And one more source, which nobody controls at all: the sun. A large solar storm disturbs the upper atmosphere the signals pass through. During a major storm in 2003, precision augmentation services were degraded for well over a day. The sun does not need a motive, a budget, or a plan. Chapter 8. Now, the honest part. Because if I stopped here, I would be selling you a disaster movie, and this is not one. The first reason is simple. There is more than one system up there. Europe operates its own constellation. Russia operates one that has been running since the Soviet era. China operates one that is now global. And here is the thing most people do not know about the phone in their pocket. It almost certainly listens to all of them at once. Modern receiver chips are multi-constellation by default, so a failure of one system alone is survivable for most consumer devices. The vulnerable equipment is the old infrastructure gear. Timing receivers installed 15 or 20 years ago, listening to exactly one source, sitting in a basement nobody visits. Nobody has an accurate inventory of how many of those exist. The second reason is that ground-based backups are being rebuilt. There is an older, low-frequency ground system that was largely switched off as obsolete. It is far less precise for position, but excellent for timing, and very hard to jam. Countries that have suffered repeated jamming from a neighbor have been rebuilding it deliberately. Others have issued formal directives requiring critical infrastructure to have alternatives. Progress is real, but slow and unevenly distributed. The third reason is that time can travel through cables. National timing signals can be distributed over fiber networks with extraordinary precision. Some countries already run this as a commercial service for banks and exchanges. It costs money, which is exactly why adoption has been patchy. Because the satellite version has always been free. And that, in one sentence, is the real problem. We built a global economy on top of a free public utility. And because nobody was billed for it, almost nobody put it on a risk register. You protect what you pay for. You forget what arrives for nothing. So where does that leave the honest answer? A complete, permanent loss of satellite positioning would not end civilization. It would not empty the shops within a week or shut down the grid. It would make almost everything modern about a quarter slower and considerably more expensive. Permanent friction, applied everywhere at once. Economies do not collapse from that. They stagnate from it, which is arguably a worse story because nobody declares an emergency over friction. And the deeper lesson is not really about satellites at all. It is that we keep building critical systems on top of convenient ones, then connecting those systems to each other, then forgetting the connection exists until the day it is tested. The engineers who install these things know exactly how thin the margin is. The people who fund them usually do not. And that gap, not the technology, is the actual point of failure. Next time you are outside, Take a second and think about it. Somewhere above you, more than 30 machines are shouting the time into empty space. They have been doing it for decades, without a break, for everyone, for free. And the entire modern world quietly leaned against that, one purchase order at a time. If this connected some dots for you, drop a like on the video. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next one looks at a single building that makes most of the world's advanced chips. And I want your take in the comments. Do you think critical infrastructure